Farley fought in the 26th Infantry Division. He received a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star, 3 Oak Leaf Clusters, 3 awards, and fought in the European theater with a ribbon with battle stars. He'll tell you some interesting stories about George Patton, some other stories that he gets into. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Robert Russell probably doesn't need a great deal of introduction as far as who he might be related to. He's probably most proud of being Rob's grandfather.
Robert W.
For you. And then after we do that, I know they're anxious to hear questions from you that you may have, both in terms of their own individual things or any other questions you have since the war. I've explained to them where we are in social studies in Normandy, but they're going to include whatever they feel comfortable doing so. So, Mr. Harrington, the microphone is down on your end. I'll have you start.
Good afternoon. I actually joined the Navy at age 17 on my birthday. I was not much older than you people. I took my training here in the States, and then they put me into the Seabees. I had to go over to Davisville, where the Seabees had their camp, and we trained in snow up to our hips. When we could get through there, they sent me to Hawaii, where it was warm. So it was either there, well, I should go back. They had us up to be transferred. There was 60 of us to go to Alaska. That was about the time that they were going to be going into Alaska on the invasion Japan was. I left Davisville because they only took 40, and I was number 60. So they sent the rest of us to California, and then they sent us to Oahu, Hawaii. There, we loaded ships for invasion. And when we went into Pearl Harbor, that is where the battleships were sunk and whatnot. If we were going to load ammunition, we would go into Honolulu. That's where the docks were for ammunition to be loaded. In Pearl Harbor itself is where all the food and material was loaded aboard the various ships. There was some CB battalions, when they loaded a ship, they would take off with that ship and make the invasion. When we lost the engines in the LST, they sent a seagoing tug out to bring us back. And then they put us aboard an aircraft and flew us up to Okinawa. While we were there, we had a typhoon. And a typhoon is pretty remarkable when you see what happens to it. I seen ships and landing barges on shore where it just lifted it up. We were aboard a freighter, and we were taking material off it. And the word came in, the captain said, you're either going to stay aboard or you're going to take off and go to high ground. Cut the lines. They didn't even bother doing anything but cut the lines to get out. And after that is when I come back home. But I had 3 other brothers. My one brother was here before the war, just like Mr. D'Alessandro. And he was over in the same area that Peter was. And he went through North Africa, Kasserine Pass, into Italy, and was wounded just outside of Rome he got hit with a tank shell. My other brother was in the Marines. He was in the Pacific with us. And he was brought communication to a cut-off company. And then he was wounded, and he come back home. And my other brother, he was in the Navy, and he was between the Atlantic and the Pacific. But my wife, her father, brother, there was 7 of them in service. And one, I'll call him by his name so I won't get him mixed up, Miller. Miller served 4 years in the Army, and he was 39 months in Jap prison camp. He was captured in Bataan, and he was on the Bataan Death March. And he lived through the Bataan Death March. He died just about well, 10 to 15 years, I don't know the exact date. But the other brother, we just had him this past month, where we honored him by flying a flag over the county building. He received a distinguished flying cross. And the other brothers, they were either in one service or the other. But between the two of us, two families, we had over 11 people in service. So we all come home safe, thank God, even though some of us were wounded. But we all survived. So thank you for inviting me, and I enjoyed this morning tremendously.
As Mr. Frank indicated earlier, my name is Herman Harrington. I served with the 69th Infantry Division in Europe. I guess our sole claim to fame, other than coming into combat at the tail end of the Battle of the Bulge, was our link up with the Russians at Torgau in Germany just prior to the end of World War II. One of the interests that has caused me to become involved with Mr. Frank and his endeavors with this class is that this country today seems to be in the midst of revisionist historians, and we are a representative group of people who served in World War II, and the only thing we're asking you as young people, as 8th graders, is to just please remember it as it was, and remember those who fought in World War II as they truly were. None of us are career people in the military. I didn't join the United States Army. As I was explaining to some of the fellows on the way up here, I was very busily shopping for a glamorous branch of the service to enlist in, and during my shopping spree, I got a notice that it said greetings, meaning you were drafted. So that was the end of my career, my interest in a military career. The World War II, as also Mr. Frank indicated, is a very unique time, I guess, in all our lives. And just thinking about it, it touched your lives as well. If you go back to your grandfathers and maybe in some cases your great-grandfathers, during World War II, there was not a person on the face of this earth that was not touched by that calamity that befell this country and the entire world. And we certainly appreciate your interest in it, and we certainly appreciate an opportunity coming before you. And I'm kind of looking forward to some of your questions. I see a girl in the back there that looks, I can only see the upper half of her face. She looks as though she may be Oriental. And I'm wondering if she's of Chinese ancestry. And if she is, I'd just like to say to her that what you're going to hear today is mainly devoted to the atrocities that Germany perpetrated against the world. But I think we also need to remember the atrocities that Japan perpetrated mainly against the Chinese people. Utterly unbelievable if you read about it. Thank you.
Well, I got a long story. I don't know if it's tell. I don't think there's enough time. I know. I went down to Waterway Docks to try to get a job to be a machinist. I was going on 15 years old. So anyway, I joined for years training. So I got drafted to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. After 6 months of training, I was on my way to North Africa. A ship got torpedoed. We got picked up by British destroyers and brought into the base of North Africa. And after tower, I got hit moved. I rejoined my outfit again in the Greenwood. I was in the Americans in Normandy. I got hit again in Normandy.
And I got back to the hospital, and back in the hospital, my uncle, we wound up in 1916 line, the body, the Battle of the Bulge. I can't tell it, go ahead. So anyway, I was in the Battle of the Bulge. I had the third sergeant. So I told the company commander about an outpost. So in the Battle of the Bulge, it was 30 below zero, and the wind blowing. So anyway, the two men on my outpost got hit. So I went out to see them, and I got medics to bring them back. And I told the fellow on the outpost, I told the company commander we've got to move a machine gun, box of grenades, and get a phone out there so we can stop the attack. Well, anyway, the two men went back in stretchers, and they never set nobody up. So I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I kept out of the machine gun there, I fired point blank at the back of the Finally, I got the artillery. I got with the phone with the artillery. I got the 105, the 155s, 60 mortars, 81 mortars. And I loaded up. Finally, they got behind me, the captain. The guy shot the captain, so I got captain. I wound up in the prison camp. So I was leaving the prison camp. I got a letter from the White House. Told me I received the Congressional Medal of Honor. I didn't know how much damage it caused. I caused over 250 damage on the enemy. They never attacked after that. And I didn't know nothing about it. I didn't know what I did or what I done, but I finally got the medal, and that was the end of my life. Thank you.
I was 21 and got drafted. I got shipped to Kentucky and was assigned to medical detachment of the infantry. Went over landed in France, went over in Germany, and you would never see the number of young men that had the leg going out with landmines. And that was my job to help get them back so they could go to the medical tents and then get shipped back home or to England or someplace else where they could go and get artificial limbs or whatever you want to call it. It's terrible shock. You go out and come through the field and all of a sudden you're banging, ankles are gone, legs are gone. So maybe I did a good job, I don't know. Then I was sent on. I was just getting ready to go to Japan, and the war was over there, so I had enough points to get out of the service at that time. And I didn't feel like staying any longer, so I just wanted to get on.
As your teacher said, airborne engineers. Everybody wants to know what an airborne engineer is. Well, our job was to put in airstrips. We used to use gliders to go in, get our equipment in there, level off a field, and that's an evacuation field. For the wounded that this guy patched up, the plane would take them back to either parts of France or England. And as far as combat, we didn't see that much. We had snipers now and then. As I look around, I see some of you about the age that they pick up a rifle and they were shooting at us, young ones. I'm sure that they didn't know what they were doing, but it was drilled in their heads to shoot whatever you can, Americans or whatever. And that is about as far as combat that I saw. We did, I feel myself, that we possibly have saved a lot of them lives of putting them runways in, getting these planes in, and then they got a place to take off and get to the, to the hospitals. And I'm not going to mention it.
and I married an English girl. And I did go to a heavy aviation engineers and stayed over, and we were married. And of course, that was 50 years. And we had the privilege to go back to England and spend our 50th wedding anniversary in England last year. And that's about all I can add to it, I think. And I'll be answering your questions on the Airborne if you want.
I want to say good afternoon. Can you hear me all right? Okay. You all know I'm Robert William Russell the First, Rob Russell's grandfather. I entered the Army February 20th, 1943. I was drafted, like many of the other gentlemen here, and I went to Camp Upton, where we were given a brand new suit of clothes and shoes to go with it. I had never had a pair of shoes before. We lived out in the country up near Mechanicville. But anyway, I went from Camp Upton down to Camp McCain, Mississippi, and there I joined the 87th Infantry Division. Its division patch was an acorn, a golden acorn. A lot of people referred to us as a nut division because of the acorn. But anyway, we went from there to Tennessee maneuvers. And many a night I slept with a rock for a pillow on Tennessee maneuvers. Well, after a month of maneuvering in Tennessee, wound up in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, which was a permanent Army camp. And I was there about 8 months, and we finally got notice we were going overseas. So we were shipped to Fort Dix, New Jersey. And there we waited, and one night, in the middle of the night, they call you out. They put you on this great big ship, the Queen Elizabeth. It was the biggest ship afloat. It held 15,000 troops. And to get only 2 meals a day, and you had to wait in line hours. Well, you got up to the kitchen area for breakfast. What would they do? They'd take 2 hard-boiled eggs and throw them in your mess kit. Then they'd pour you a cup of tea. Well, you know American soldiers don't like tea, but they served it to us anyway. And then for dinner, you go through the same process. You go through the bowels of the ship, long lines. And when you got up there, you hold your mess kit out, and they mutton stew, greasy. Oh, nobody could eat it. And also, again, the proverbial cup of tea. Well, anyway, we went across the ocean on the Queen Elizabeth unescorted. In other words, we didn't go in convoy because the Queen Elizabeth was reputed to be so fast that the submarines couldn't keep up with us. Well, after 6 days at sea, we landed in the Firth of Clyde in Scotland. There we disembarked from the Queen Elizabeth, and we got on English trains and went down to a small town in England in the Midlands of England. And we stayed about a month there, and then we went down to a port on the English Channel. And we boarded, this time we boarded an American ship, and the food was very good. And we went over into France. We landed in Le Havre, France. This was in September 1944. And we bivouacked. Anybody know what bivouacking is? That's where you assemble and you pitch pup tents. They call it bivouac. And we bivouacked in an apple orchard. Well, after a few days there, they put us on a train. Now, does anybody here take French? What's the French word for horse? You don't know? Anybody know? Is it cheval? What's the French word for men? Homes. So these boxcars that we got on to go up to the front were labeled 48 homes, men, homes, or 8 chevaux. In other words, they were held 40 men or 8 horses. so they were commonly referred to as 48s. So we trained one day in these cattle cars, which they were really. They had big holes in the side. And we wound up in Metz, France, and there we went into action. Now Metz was a city in France which is surrounded by forts, and our job was to reduce the forts because the main body of troops had passed through Metz. They were now almost into Germany fighting. Well, in about 10 days or so, we reduced the forts, and so we moved on up into, can't think of the name of it, but it's right on the German border. And that was our first taste of real combat, where we were face to face with the enemy. And I was real scared, and a lot of others were too, but we kept going. One thing about it, you find out everybody else is going, you're going to go too. But anyway, we stayed there for a few days, then we withdrew and went into a holding position because up north there had been a fierce battle raging, which was known as the Battle of the Bulge. So we were headed for the Battle of the Bulge. We got there, and I unfortunately, one of the first days, was hospitalized for a slight wound. But when I got in the hospital, I took my shoes off after 45 days without taking my shoes off, and my feet swelled. So I went back through hospital chains back to England, where I spent almost 3 months in an English hospital. And when I got discharged from there, I got put on limited service, went back into France. Well, I spent 7 months working in an army hospital outside of Paris, France. And then, after 7 months, they decided I wasn't needed there any longer, so they sent me back up to Germany. And for Germany, I went, after about a month, I worked in the supply depot in Germany. We had all we wanted to eat and drink and all sorts of good things. Went up to Bremerhaven, Germany. We got on a Victory ship headed for the United States. Well, a Victory ship is meant to carry cargo, not men. But they refitted it because the need was great to get men back to their homes in the United States. So we started out across the North Sea, and it was the middle of winter. It was in February. So anyway, this Victory ship going through waves like this, go boom, go like this, boom. Oh, that ship would shake and tremble. Well, we got a hole in the freshwater hole, and we had to put into port at the Azores for fresh water. But anyway, they decided to create passes for the soldiers. So, naturally, being at the end of the alphabet, I was scheduled for the second day. Well, the A through M made such a mess in the town that they canceled all passes. I never got to the Azores. So anyway, then we came home to the United States, in the New York Harbor, and it was very thrilling to us to pass the Statue of Liberty. That was the best thing I think I've ever seen. And then I went to Fort Dix, and there I was discharged. Went home to Mechanicsville, New York. And that's the end of my story. Thank you for your attention.
I don't think you want to get into the last half of my story. The first half was fine. I left the Army outfit, went to Alabama, Fort McClellan down there, and we were federalized and sent over to Hawaii as the first relief troops from Pearl Harbor attack. And I was there, well, enjoying Hawaii. There was no fighting going on or anything. They really took good care of us. And I left there and went back to Georgia, officer school. When I graduated from there, it got tight in Europe, so I had to leave there and go to Europe with the Boston, Massachusetts outfit. The thing of it was, when you get over there and got into the fights, some of the things you don't want to see or hear. The concentration camps, they had dark ditches. And the new bodies were down in there, and waited till they got piled up, and then
situation. And then going up into the Vosges, I happened to come right alongside that General Patton, his special vehicle there, and had a Jeep all done over. And there, right at that place we met, piles of car soldiers in the woods there. And it was sickening. It's something I don't want to remember, but you can't forget something like that. After the vote, everything turned out fine. And all the tough guys coming back. As he said, his best sight was the Statue of Liberty. Oh, I was a big tough guy, but you want to see the tears come out of their eyes when they saw her. That was beautiful. And I'm glad it was all over. Thank you.
I'll feel free to know that they would like to hear comments and questions that you may have for any of our distinguished panelists. So, would anyone like to start?
Do you still have any hostility for any people of the countries that you were fighting against?
Do you still have hostilities for any of the people that you fought against?
Really the population, we'll take, for instance, France. Now, when the Germans came into the French towns and so on and so forth, what could the people do but to, we'll use the word butter up to the Germans. Then, as the tide turned from the invasion and the Americans, and of course up north, the British come in the northern part. So who are they gonna, they'd have to butter up to the Americans. It's liberation. So I can't see where any of the troops had, anything against the German population, because it's just like when I got my greetings from our President of the United States, he says, welcome. So what was I supposed to do but fight for the United States? And that's what your French and your German soldiers did for their own country. So you have the population. I don't think that you had any regret towards the population of people themselves. That's my opinion.
May I add something here? You have to remember that these soldiers, the Germans, the Japanese, they had commanders who were responsible for the war. And these people were all tried in the War Crimes Tribunal. So they really, in essence, got the ones who were responsible for the war. So we couldn't really hold it against the people who were hostile. That answers some of your questions.
I think it might be easier if you stand up and speak really loudly, as loud as you possibly can.
What was it like in prison?
Well, they're all talking good about the Germans. I have no goddamn use for them. They treated me pretty rough, the German prison kids. I went weighing 185, I come out weighing 116. So you can't even say about them, I got to say about them. They treated you like hell. You went there at fence, they shoot you. You went there at they shoot you. Come out at night, they shoot you. If you got any meat, you were lucky. If the horse got hit, you got some meat for the night. If you didn't, you went without food. So I lost close to 40, 50 pounds in prison. We were finally liberated by Patton, who was out to open the camp and liberate us. But there's a lot of them died and they never come out. They never come out. Because if they got dysentery, there was nothing to stop them. The only thing that English doctor had, where you could stop it, was cut the bark off the tree and burn it and eat it and get it down, it might stop your that you have. Because if it did, you die. You just stood there and worked out your system, and you had nothing to fight with. And there were plenty of them died in the prison camps. That's all I can say.
Just one, I'm not quite as compassionate and generous as the first two speakers were. I share some of Peter's feelings, not about the German people today, but about the German soldiers who were trying to kill me when I was over there, and about some of the things that we saw, like a little incident up around Malmedy in, I think it was in France or Belgium, 125 American troops that were captured by the Germans, taken out into a field, machine gun, killed well, I think it was 2 got away. That's how they caught the commanding officer of the German troops. And when we went by there, it was in the wintertime, everything was covered with snow, and they had wire strips around there, so we didn't drive up, so the tanks didn't go over the bodies. But I guess I'm not a very good Christian when I think of those things, and I think of some of the atrocities that not a Holocaust camp, but a camp was liberated up near Leipzig, had a combination of British prisoners of war and yes, they were Jewish or Poles, political prisoners that they had all killed. The prisoners of war they didn't kill. Polish prisoners had been all killed. And we had a Jewish rabbi come to us and want to ask permission to hold a burial ceremony. And he was driving my company commander nuts because he was trying to get us out of there while we were still reasonably under control. So finally he said, let them have the burial service, and they buried 3 cases of soap that had been rendered out of Jewish bodies. So it takes a lot of, I guess, Christian understanding to be able to forgive those people in that, those soldiers in that era, not the ones today, but the ones in that era who for many years denied that those things even happened, and they're denying it today, and some of them that the Holocaust never happened. So I wish I was a better compassionate Christian, not more of a realist, I guess. Thank you.
Did we have any problems? Let me tell you about an incident that happened to me. My wife and I was a school teacher, social studies too, up in the North Country. We lived out in the boondocks, and there was a long road, and the main road into our camp. My wife and I were in bed one night, and we were sleeping, and all of a sudden we heard a rumble. It was during a snowstorm, and there must have been a snowplow coming up the road. My wife says, I jumped out of bed, rolled into the bed, hired power tanks. Is that what you meant? But that was the only road expression I had that I remember.
How was your feeling if you killed someone, or you ended up killing someone? What was your feeling at the time that occurred?
You know, when we were captured, or what, during the action?
During the action.
During the action, I think there was only one fellow on my side. And that was the fellow upstairs. Did you hear what say?
There was not a great deal of rationalization. I mean, at the time we were doing it, at the time these things happened, because it was your life that was being threatened. And you did what you had to do to stay alive. And I guess the human mind being the great thing that it is, was a demolition man. I handled explosives, I did booby traps and minefields. And to go and to speak to the mean spirit, the mean spiritedness of the German soldier, if you want to look at it from that viewpoint, the Germans had some pretty horrific booby traps. They had what they call a shoe mine. When you stepped on it, it exploded. It didn't kill you. It blew your foot off. Because it took 3 other people to take care of you now. They didn't want to kill you. They wanted to wound you. They had, and this is kind of, I guess the only way to explain it is tell it as it was. They had a booby trap called a castrator. It held a rifle shell. It was buried in the ground. And when you stepped on it, the rifle shell would go off while you were in mid-stride. Those are some of the things that went around in those turtles' minds, I guess.
They had screaming names, dogs and names. It was about this big, and they put up the ground, and had 3 little frogs come up on it. That's what. You stepped on one, the thing would explode, you go about 3 feet, converted to, you had 350 steel balls that capable of wiping out of the door. And in the sand, you couldn't see it. Because the sand, they could bury under the sand, and if the foot goes down, you don't see it. And all the boys got wiped out. And the thing was put up about 3 feet in burst, and had about 350 steel balls in it. What we used to do was, we used to send the A-Rad sheep. A-Rad run down the sheep, so we'd send it through the fields. And if they exploded, well, we didn't win. That was the only way we could save ourselves.
Do you ever regret fighting in the war?
It was like a 7 weeks or years till I slept with students. You're thinking about that, you have to make up your own mind what you do when you're 19 years old or something. Well, as our leaders, they're be able to teach you about children or about the man of the country. We did. That's what I think we did. And you were taught that anybody gets up on you, I couldn't have figured it because I was there.
If World War II had been fought and lost, if we who are sitting here had not fought in World War II and caused World War II to be won, would you be here today?
I have something to add. One uncle that I talked about, Miller, while he was in Jack prison camp, he made an American flag on a window shade under penalty of death. If he got caught, they'd shoot him. He kept that, and he's working on it at night with some kind of colors. I never found out how he done it, but it's an American flag on a window shed, and he buried that at night. And he said that he would fly that over the camp when he got liberated. He did it. And that's how much we think of the American flag. I wear it today.
If you heard, I guess I'd add to that, about things like the Japan Death March and concentration camps, some of the atrocities that took place, did that affect you? Or did you even know about that at the time?
Didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Some of us knew about the death camp.
Oh, yeah, death camps, yeah. I was in German Heights, I was in German death camps, yeah. In fact, I was in a prison camp next to camping named German camp. And I could always hear people screaming. And there was going in the gas chambers.
You were
I
near.
didn't know what it was all about.
You were near a
You
German.
did or did not know? You did or did not know?
I can't hear you.
You did or did not know what it was about?
I didn't know why they were screaming, but I'd say I was about there, maybe about 2 blocks away from the German prison camp, but you could hear the people screaming. And I don't know what they were screaming about until I found out later they're headed in the gas chambers. That was kept, it was in Munich, outside of Munich.
If you were near a German, if you were near a German death camp, you didn't have to have anybody tell you. You could tell by the odor.
The odor, the burn, shit.
For miles, you could smell it.
I have a question about that. We've been reading reviews of a new book that a Harvard professor has written that asserts that most of the people in Germany, the citizenry, did know that this was happening. What's your take on that?
A Harvard professor has written a book saying that most of the German civilian population, I guess, during World War II, didn't know.
I don't
Well,
believe
he said they knew.
What did they
Oh, they
think?
did know, yes.
Yes, they did.
What did they think that people were coming, going, and coming in the trains, getting off at the towns? And they never saw them again. They didn't know what was happening? Why did the mayor of that city go back and commit suicide? He committed suicide right after he saw it, because he knew what was going on.
Some of the German towns that were taken, I can only speak for the one city that I know of for a fact, is Leipzig, Germany. The Bürgermeister, his wife, and his two children committed suicide when we went into that town. Because they didn't want to face reality, I guess. The party was over, and they were not going to have to pay the fiddler, I guess, for everything they'd done during those prior 5 or 6 years. They committed suicide.
I'd like to add a little speak on that. You take your German population towards the end of the war. All kinds of planes, anything that could carry a bomb was heading for Germany. We had to end the war. And there were write-ups, oh man, that's humane that they're bombing complete cities, level them. But let's go back a couple of years before that, when the Germans were bombing England and France and leveling cities, and that was all right with the German population. It was great. But as soon as the tide turned and the bombs were coming back to them, they thought, oh my God, that's not right. That's the story. Don't forget we had an Air Force. And, all right, let's say without the Air Force, not 50 years, but we'd have been fighting that war many, many more years than what it was. They had to level these cities. They were making airplanes, ball bearing factories, and we had to just wipe them out to stop them. That's why your German Air Force was down almost to zero for the simple fact that they couldn't build them. And that's our people over here, our war bonds were making airplanes and boom, boom, boom. And without them airplanes going over them skies, and the British at night or whatever opposite, and they just kept going. And that really helped when the war was over.
So, this is a question. Jonathan, there's a...
Well, I was just wondering, like,
A little bit louder.
I was wondering if any of you ever, like, liberated, like, a death or concentration camp if you were over there.
Did any of you involved in liberating an actual death concentration camp, or concentration camp?
Well, people were,
Any concentration.
Okay, sir.
they opened the gates on one, and they were a dozen or so behind the wall there. All of them were in the trenches, dead, stripped, and heading for the gas chamber when we got there. We stopped that. I said it was released about, it was a couple of prison dogs, and it's a nice deal to get them out of there.
The rest were dead?
All the rest, all on the, in the trenches there, it was terrible.
service. We had 21 days of action. We were fighting the best army in the world. These kids, when they were 12 and 13 years old, they had rifles. They told me when I was in the prison camp that a PFC in the German army could take over a company in the American army. That's how much training they had. It was the best armored division in the world. What was it? Rommel was one of the best tank fighters in the world. Nobody could compete with him in the desert. They had Germans fighting at Herbert, but he was one of the best. He was training. His training. They told me he took his training at West Point. I don't know. Somebody told me that. I don't know what he did about it. But I know that they told you that a kid 12 years old could take over a company of American infantry. That's how much training they had. That's how much experience. They forget, when we went into that war in North Africa, the Germans already had 5 years of experience that we had to face. Now, it took our officers almost 3 months to figure out what they were doing in Africa. They would go 300 yards and pile a bunch of stones. They go another 400 yards and pile a bunch of stones. We didn't know what the hell stones were. But when we reached that goddamn pile of stones, they knew the range. They knew the range on their artillery, where it knocked us off. It took us 6 months to figure it out. That's how much experience they had. We were fighting the best army in the world.
Could I ask you to go back to your experience, and I'm sure we're very dramatic. What was the reaction of the people still living in both of those days? Did they know who you were? Could they react?
Well, just one or two of them did recognize what we were. And then turned around and talked to the rest of them, and they went up. But, initially, they backed away and went to hiding. They could see the point. And there was less. Behind the fire there was trenches to be pushed down and burned up and all that. It was terrible. One feature about it, on the crossover, there was one of their guards, and it was one line up on me, and I got him in the hip. They got him first. Made me feel a little better today. But I was think I could have been that straighten out. That's
They had a gun called the 88. We go 2, 3 of our packed tanks. I'll figure that one out. We had the tanks. The Germans had 12 inches of armor in front of them. You hit the tank with a 75, we knocked it out. The only thing you could aim for is the belt around it. You might knock that out to stop, but you're not going to knock the tank. Then maybe 8 go 2, 3 of our tanks in the desert. They found not too late. The 88? Yeah. Well, we know it depends how they were fired. You could go 3 miles. You could go 3 miles. But the philosophy of it, whatever invented that gun, but everything we learned from the Germans. We had to learn the hard way. We learned from them. We learned about the mines. We learned about the aviation. We learned about everything from them. We had to learn the hard way. That's what we learned from them. Because we had 37 millimeters on roadblocks in the Casuarina Pass to knock out a 60-ton tank. We shipped them all the way over to Africa to put them on a roadblock. The machine gun could take it out. We didn't have the equipment. We had to learn how to build the equipment, build it. We didn't have it. We didn't compete with it.
Did anyone encounter blitzkrieg?
What?
Did any of you encounter the Blitzkrieg? They learned about the Lightning War, Blitzkrieg, and the tanks, the artillery, the infantry, and the airborne.
The Battle of the Bulge, the infantry. Well, I had a phone out there that weighed 81 orders on them, and the 60 orders. The 105 is an infantry artillery shell, shoots about a 70-pound shell, and the 155 will shoot a 100-pound shell. And I was directing the artillery from one end to the other until they got behind it. And I could see the tanks out, blowing tanks right out of the goddamn desert. as they were coming in the boat. And the 4.2 mortars would blow the top, right off the top of the trees, way around the Germans. They were exploding them more, that made the 4.2 mortars 5 feet off the ground. They burst, which we had. And then I held them off over there, a half hour, close to 4 hours. So my outfit got out of there. And I told them to get out. I said, get out. And I ordered out of my own position, because I didn't want to be captured.
One of the most deadly things that we came across during the Battle of Bulls was tree bursts.
Oh, yeah.
Artillery shells that would hit trees, hit them fairly high, and then they would detonate. And the shrapnel would come down like rain. And when we first went in there, we were sort of at a loss of why all the tops of the tree. We soon found out why. But you could hear tire gangs.
Oh, yeah.
You could hear
We
them.
had the steel
You
treads.
could hear them a mile away.
You
The
could
clang.
we had steel treads. We had,
What was coming.
we could always, I could always tell the German tech, because that steel treads, we had rubber treads. You could always feel them coming.
A couple more questions then.
You said you worked demolition.
Pardon?
You said you worked demolition?
I was demolition specialist. That's a nice sounding name.
Now, were you responsible for blowing up some of the bridges?
Pillboxes.
Pillboxes?
We didn't blow any bridges. We were trying to keep them intact. We were moving forward, not retreating.
That's
The ones retreating blow the bridges. The ones moving forward try to take them intact.
Yeah. Why don't we do Mark and then Dennis, and Dennis will wrap this up. Mark?
Like, when we, I don't know, Hiroshima, everything like that, we pretty sure, what was your reaction?
I personally didn't know about it until after the war was over. I was in a replacement depot in Newark, Belgium, getting ready to go to Japan. And the atom bomb, something happened and the war was over. And I truly didn't know what happened. But I was so glad that the war was over and I could not go home. I found out later that it was an atom bomb. I also found out later that an invasion of the two main islands, Kyushu and Honshu in Japan, would have cost the United States about 500,000 lives. 500,000 lives. So glad they did drop an atom bomb.
That's what I'm Truman for that.
That's what everything was.
Any other reactions about knowing about the atomic bomb? You
I was glad it was over because I was going into Japan.
I was there for Japan first. And cancel, so I could go home.
Does it seem like the worst possible time?
I don't know. I've heard of everything. I don't know anything. I can't get it done.
What was the question? I think you were as close as it was.
When we fought the Pacific, you fought the jungle. Okay? How far can you see in the jungle? Those guys up in the trees that shoot at you and everything else.
You know, I don't want, like, program like, Japan, and like, they really figured out, like, trenches, and just like sitting there for like hours.
Yeah.
My brother was one of those in the Marines. You might see in the cave. He was one of those that swung over and threw the dynamite into the cave. So,
Dennis, you want to wrap up?
What were your thoughts again? Case on the plan.
It was really straight. I did. He was just out of his mind. Not that he wasn't smart. He wanted to take the world. At least that's the way I figured it.
Very demanding. What Hitler said to the officers had to go.
That's where he did so many murders and everything. Because he tried.
We were fighting pillboxes, cars with 6-feet lines. They wouldn't come out. You get around the back and get a tank to bury. One time they sent 2 German shepherds out. I wish you'd called them. They're Africans. 2 dogs, 2 German shepherds. The one time we took the pillbox, we got around the back, they wouldn't come out. So we got a tank to bury them with a tin. They're fanatics. They wouldn't come out of pillbox. They knew they'd be captured, they wouldn't come out. They had vicious dogs. the prison camps had vicious dogs. They tear you apart. Them dogs caught up there, they tear you apart than German shepherds. That's why anytime somebody escaped the camp, you had to look out for the dogs.
And Dobermans too, they trained Doberman pinchers, that was the German dog.
They're trained to tear you apart.
I want to thank you very, very much. As a thank you, we have something to give back to you. So we're going to perform this for you now. So thank you. Okay, guys, any more? There are some medals, including the Congressional Medal of Honor. As you walk out to your courses this afternoon, you might want to take those back. Oh, yeah, you white, yeah.
Hey, you, move it. Anoop.
Those who were in the infantry, combat got this got you $10 a month extra pay. Really?
That's the prison wall. This is the congressional.
When he's wearing that, he's entitled to a salute.
Oh, but the president.
Yeah. Plus his campaign ribbons. You have a ribbon for served in Europe, served in Asia or wherever.
That's Congressional Medal of Honor.
Did like all the German troops have
That's
the
our emblem right there.
swastika on their?
No, not all of them. No. Some of them, the most ferocious troops were the SS troops, and they wore twin bolts of lightning and a skull and crossbones on their collar.
What made them an SS officer over like how do they distinguish it like picket?
Most ruthless.
They're the most ruthless soldiers.
We had it when we went into Leipzig. There was a unit of SS troops holed up in what they call the Napoleon's Monument or something there in Leipzig, and they wouldn't surrender. And we tried to get them to come out, and the monument was like 4-foot thick walls, stone walls. Artillery wouldn't penetrate it.
So the only way they finally come out and surrender, they